Peppa Pig and the Bouncy Ball. One day, Peppa finds a small rubber ball on the floor. Whoa! She drops the ball and it bounces up high. George happily tries to catch the bouncing ball. Peppa gently throws the ball toward George. The ball bounces back and forth between them. The little ball turns the moment into an energetic and fun game for Peppa and George.
Peppa and George decided to join a race. But not an ordinary race, it's a trash truck race. Trash trucks may not be fast, but Peppa and George can do anything when they're determined. The race gets more exciting as both trucks speed through obstacles. However, no race is without surprises, and Peppa couldn't escape this trap hole. No one wins when there are too many obstacles, but at least both had fun. The race ends, but Peppa and George realize that having fun is more important than anything else. Peppa and the toy treasure chest. Peppa finds a strange little chest buried in the sand. Everyone gathers around curiously, surprised and delighted. They huddle together as Peppa opens the chest. Inside are many toys. Each friend takes one and giggles happily. They run around playing joyfully with their new treasures. By sunset, they all head to Peppa's house, still bouncing with excitement.
Peppa Pig and the strange noisy clock. Everything is very quiet until Peppa and George hear a strange sound they have never heard before. It turns out to be a clock, but not an ordinary one. It's big, it's loud, and it clearly loves attention. Every time the clock hand moves, the whole garden seems to wiggle along, and Peppa finds it very exciting. George decides to touch it. The clock immediately responds with an even louder sound, very much its own style. No one knows what this clock is really for, but it is very good at turning everything into a game. In the end, the clock becomes quiet, and Peppa and George realize that time goes fastest when you're having fun.
Peppa and George were sitting in the yard when they looked up at the sky and saw a cloud shaped like a bear. Peppa pointed at the sky and said, "Look, this cloud looks like a bear sleeping." George mimicked the bear, lying down and pretending to sleep on the grass, making Peppa laugh loudly. Mummy Pig walked over and saw them, saying, "You both are so cute, just like real bears." Peppa and George stood up and began imitating bears, walking slowly around the yard, laughing happily. they sat together in the yard, looking at the bear-shaped cloud and enjoying the simple joy of the moment. Peppa Pig and the Rainbow Rain. It's raining outside, and Peppa and George watch the raindrops slide down the window, wondering when a rainbow will appear. The rain stops, and sunlight peeks through the clouds. Peppa happily grabs her umbrella and runs outside with George to find the rainbow. A big, colorful rainbow arches across the sky. Peppa skips with joy, while George points up in amazement. In their imagination, Peppa and George slide down the rainbow like a giant, colorful slide, laughing as they glide through fluffy clouds. As the rainbow fades, Peppa and George lie on the grass, smiling softly, knowing that every rain brings a little magic. Peppa and George were walking near a sparkling, crystal-clear lake.
Whoa!
Peppa set a paper boat out on the water, and George watched it float gently. Daddy Pig brought a small paddleboard, suggesting they could have a boat race. Peppa and George paddled lightly, laughing as their boat glided across the lake. Mommy Pig stood by the lake, taking pictures and reminding them, don't go too far. Finally, the whole family stood by the lake, admiring the sparkling water and enjoying a peaceful moment. Peppa and the Little Paper Boat. After the rain, Peppa folds a paper boat. She sets it on the puddle, and it begins to float. The wind makes the boat move around like magic. Daddy Pig blows gently to make it go faster. The family relaxes together on the porch, talking about the boat's adventure.
Peppa Pig and the Little Fan. One day, Peppa finds a small fan on the floor near the stairs.
Whoa!
She picks it up and turns it on. A gentle breeze blows, making Peppa feel amused. George puts his hand near the fan to feel the cool air. Peppa places a small piece of paper in front of the fan, and it lifts into the air. The little fan turns the moment into a fun and playful experience for Peppa and George. Peppa Pig and the Balloon. One day, Peppa notices a red balloon floating in the room.
Wow!
She gently taps the balloon, and it slowly drifts upward. Peppa and George jump up together, trying to touch the balloon. Suddenly, the balloon drifts to another corner of the room. Peppa and George quickly think of a new game. balloon floats back and forth, turning the whole room into a fun little playground.
Peppa Pig and the Windy Hill Picnic. Today, Peppa's family goes for a picnic on a windy hill. Oh! George chases his apple as the wind blows it away. Daddy Pig's hat flies off.
Oh.
Time for a little chase. They enjoy lunch together, laughing in the breeze. And finally, they fly a kite high into the sky.
Peppa Pig and the melting cake. Peppa is very excited about the cake, especially on a sunny day like this. But the sun has its own plans for the cake. The cake seems to be changing shape right before their eyes. Peppa tries to save the cake, but the sunshine doesn't cooperate. Even though it's no longer perfect, the cake still looks delicious. Peppa and George learn that sometimes fun doesn't need to be perfect to be sweet.
Peppa and George were watching the clouds, and today there was a special cloud, a cloud bus. Who needs a real bus when with just imagination, Peppa and George are already flying high? The clouds looked like strange creatures, and Peppa couldn't stop imagining they were dancing with her. Not just a cloud bus. Now there's a cloud elephant greeting them. The ride through these clouds was magical, and they met even more cloud friends. Although the journey was just in their imagination, Peppa and George had an unforgettable adventure.
Peppa Pig and the noisy vacuum cleaner. Everything is quiet until the vacuum cleaner wakes up. The machine starts making loud noises, showing its power.
Whoa!
Everything nearby gets pulled toward the vacuum. Whoa! The vacuum moves around the room as if taking a walk. Oh! After all the noise, the room becomes perfectly clean.
Wow!
Sometimes a little noise can be useful.
Peppa Pig and the Night Garden. Peppa was fast asleep, moonlight shining softly through the window. In her dream, Peppa stepped into a glowing garden filled with flowers that lit up the night. George appeared in the garden, and together they laughed and played among the shining flowers. A glowing butterfly flew around Peppa, guiding them deeper into the magical garden. George woke up in the night, hearing Peppa giggle in her dream. He yawned, smiled, and pulled the blanket over himself to sleep again. Peppa Pig and the magical rain. It starts to rain, and Peppa and George watch the drops roll down the window like tiny mirrors. Mummy Pig brings out their raincoats and favorite muddy boots. To them, rainy days mean the best time to jump in puddles. They rush outside, splashing water everywhere, laughing as the puddles sparkle like mirrors on the ground. Suddenly, the sun peeks through the clouds, and a bright rainbow stretches across the sky.
Wow! Whoa!
Daddy Pig steps outside, looks up, and is amazed to see the rain has stopped and a beautiful rainbow has appeared. Peppa and George laugh joyfully, ending the magical afternoon.
Peppa Pig and the Wandering Shadow. On a sunny afternoon, Peppa's shadow looks longer than usual. Today, the shadow doesn't want to move the same way. George tries to chase his shadow, but it's faster than expected. The shadows turn into a strange and funny game. As the sun sets, the shadows slowly fade. In the end, the shadow returns to where it belongs. Peppa Pig and the dancing light bulb. As evening comes, Peppa and George turn on the light to keep playing. But today, the light bulb seems very lively. The light flickers in a steady rhythm. Their shadows on the wall begin to dance along. After a short performance, the light becomes normal again. Sometimes, even a simple light can bring an unexpected joy.
Peppa Pig and the cloud pillow. Peppa finds a soft cloud-like pillow and hugs it. George touches it, and the pillow glows gently. They imagine floating through the sky on a fluffy cloud. The cloud carries them past rainbows and soft breezes. Peppa wakes up smiling, with Mummy Pig watching warmly. Peppa Pig and the musical puddle. Peppa and George discover a sparkling puddle after the gentle rain.
Wow!
George jumps in, and a soft ting sound rings out. Peppa jumps into another spot, creating a second playful sound. They hop hop around making a funny little melody together. The whole family joins in, creating their cheerful puddle concert.
Peppa Pig and the Magic Toy Car. One day, Peppa and George discover a small toy car on the floor. Huh? Peppa gently pushes the car and it rolls forward quickly. George happily drives the car around the room. In their imagination, the little car becomes a real car on a long road. The toy car climbs over hills and passes through fluffy clouds. Soon the car stops, but the fun adventure in their imagination continues. Peppa Pig and the Trash Can Race. Peppa and George discover old trash can vehicles in the yard and come up with a fun idea. Peppa jumps onto a trash can vehicle while George watches curiously.
Let's go!
The race begins. Peppa's trash can zooms ahead. George follows closely, both cheering happily. George accidentally crashes into a pile of toys, making Peppa giggle as she races past.
Yahoo!
The race ends with laughter as the whole family enjoys the moment together. Peppa Pig and the Backward Clock. One quiet afternoon, Peppa and George notice something strange about the clock in their living room. Instead of moving forward, the clock hands begin to turn backward. As the clock runs backward, everything seems to slow down. Even the smallest movements become gentle and slow. With a light touch, time pauses for a moment. When everything returns to normal, Peppa realizes that sometimes slowing down can be fun too. Peppa Pig and the Lost Cloud.
Whoa!
It's a peaceful afternoon when Peppa and George notice a cloud floating unusually close to their backyard. Wherever they go, the cloud follows, as if it's afraid of getting lost. Peppa tries to touch the cloud. George tries too, but it always stays just out of reach. Soon, the cloud begins to fade away, leaving a few raindrops behind as a goodbye. Peppa and George learn that sometimes short visits can leave the longest lasting joy. Peppa Pig and the Super Fast Slide. Today, a tall and long slide appears right in front of the house. Peppa climbs up quickly, curious about the speed.
Yahoo!
slide sends Peppa down faster than she expected. George decides to try the speed too. Each ride fills the yard with laughter. Sometimes fun doesn't need to be far away. It can be right at your doorstep.
Peppa Pig and the Dance Day Adventure. Peppa and George stood in the living room. Daddy and Mummy Pig prepared music.
Wow.
Peppa bounced to the music. George spun around happily, both smiling brightly. Daddy Pig tried to dance along, stumbled a bit. Peppa and George giggled. Mummy Pig helped Daddy Pig keep the rhythm. Peppa and George danced around, clapping to the music. Peppa and George danced continuously, spinning and raising their hands. The whole family laughed joyfully. The family sat together on the couch, relaxing after dancing, laughing and resting happily. Peppa and the shared lunch. Today, there's a new friend, Wendy Wolf, who forgot her lunch.
Hey!
Peppa looks at her 2 sandwiches and thinks of Wendy sitting quietly. Let's share, says Peppa. Wendy smiles happily. Everyone shares their food. The playground fills with laughter. Madame Gazelle smiles. Sharing warms both the heart and the tummy. Peppa and George were playing in the garden when they spotted a giant toy car rolling toward them. George quickly climbed into the toy car, took the wheel, and laughed happily as the car started rolling. Peppa tried to chase the car, but it was too fast, making her run after it. Mummy Pig saw them and reminded, "Be careful! Don't let the car roll too far!" Peppa and George took turns driving the toy car, going over small tree stumps in the garden. Finally, the toy car stopped, and Peppa and George got out, laughing joyfully from their fun adventure.
Peppa Pig and the Little Mirror. One day, Peppa finds a small mirror on the living room sofa. She picks up the mirror and looks into it with curiosity. Peppa starts making funny faces in front of the mirror. George walks closer, curious to try it too. George laughs when he sees his reflection. The little mirror turns the moment into a fun and playful game for Peppa and George.
Peppa and George brought the big building block set from the house to the yard, excited to start the game. Mummy Pig spread a large blanket on the grass, making it comfortable for Peppa and George to play with their Lego. Peppa started building a beautiful castle with the large blocks, while George carefully placed the smaller pieces around it. Daddy Pig joined in, trying to build a tall tower with the blocks, making the whole family laugh. Mummy Pig added special blocks to the castle, creating flags and flowers, and the whole family clapped and cheered. The family sat around the Lego castle, laughing happily and taking photos of their wonderful creation, Peppa Pig and the soap bubble dance. Daddy Pig had just finished assembling a giant bubble machine in the backyard.
Ta-da!
The machine started blowing countless bubbles, and Peppa and George danced while chasing them. Daddy Pig tried dancing after the bubbles, but every step he took made them all pop. Mummy Pig turned on the giant bubble mode, surprising the whole family with huge floating bubbles. Peppa and George danced around the giant bubble, reaching for it as it floated higher. The family sat in front of the porch, relaxing while watching bubbles drift into the sky.
Peppa Pig and the Shooting Star Train. A shooting star streaks across the night sky, surprising Peppa and George. It lands and turns into a glowing train in their yard. Aha! The train doors open, inviting them aboard. They travel through starry skies past constellations and planets. The train returns them home, leaving a shining star ticket behind. Peppa Pig and the Curious Mirror. One morning, inside the house, Peppa and George find a shiny mirror in the corner of the room. Peppa tilts her head, and the reflection copies her.
Whoa!
George jumps on the carpet, and the mirror jumps too. They make funny faces together. Peppa wonders if there is another room inside the mirror. In the end, they laugh and enjoy their simple but fun discovery indoors. Peppa Pig and the Giant Car. Peppa and George are surprised to see a giant car blocking their gate. The wheels of the car are even taller than Peppa. The huge car casts a long shadow over the garden. Inside, the car looks like a moving room. As the car slowly moves, the whole garden seems to shake. Peppa and George realize that sometimes the bigger something is, the more curious it becomes. Peppa Pig and the Very Low Cloud. One morning, Peppa and George notice a cloud floating lower than usual. The cloud drifts across the yard as if taking a walk. Peppa wonders if she can touch the cloud. The cloud keeps changing shape with the gentle wind. A small cloud is enough to cool the whole garden. Soon, the cloud floats back up, leaving a peaceful morning behind.
Peppa and George are ready for the dance contest. But there's a secret. Not everyone knows how to dance like Peppa. Never doubt Peppa's creativity, even if it's a super spin move instead of a dance step. George isn't any less. It's just that he hasn't fully developed his shoestring dance potential yet.
Hello.
Sometimes a graceful dance ends with a free fall, at least for the bunny. Whether winning or losing, what matters is everyone can laugh and dance happily. With Peppa, every day is a day to dance and laugh out loud. Peppa Pig and the Dream of Flying to the Stars. Peppa was sleeping in bed, moonlight shining into the room, eyes closed. Peppa dreamed she was floating in the sky among the stars. George appeared in the dream, both flying past the sparkling stars. Wow! Peppa and George played among the constellations, spinning and holding hands. Peppa woke up, smiling, looking out the window at the moon and twinkling stars, dreaming of her next adventure. Peppa Pig and the Cloudlight Bridge. A shining cloud drifts down, catching Peppa and George's attention. It forms a soft path lifting them into the sky. They discover a glowing rainbow-like bridge above the clouds. They run across it among floating light flowers and cloudbirds. The cloud brings them home with a tiny glowing flower in their hands.
Peppa Pig and the clock that rang at the wrong time. Everything is calm and peaceful until the clock suddenly rings, even though it's clearly not the right time. Peppa notices the wall clock. The hands aren't moving, but the bell is very busy. George takes a closer look, and as if answering him, the clock rings again. Peppa gently touches the clock, and it immediately proves that it loves attention. Suddenly, the minute hand spins quickly, as if the clock is trying to catch up with time. In the end, the clock goes quiet again. Peppa and George learn that sometimes time just needs a reminder that everyone is having fun. Peppa Pig and the Little Drum. One day, Peppa notices a small drum on the floor. She gently taps the drum to hear its sound.
Aha!
George listens carefully and finds the sound very fun. Soon, George tries playing the drum too. Peppa and George take turns making a cheerful rhythm. The little drum turns the room into a tiny concert for Peppa and George.
Peppa Pig and the Little Paper Boat. Peppa makes a paper boat and places it in a puddle. George watches the boat drift slowly. A breeze pushes it forward, and they run after it. In their imagination, the boat becomes big and carries them along sparkling water. The wind stops, and they pick up the little boat, smiling. Never thought that an afternoon walk would turn into a disco under the streetlight. This streetlight is like a DJ, and soon enough Peppa became the main dancer of the party. This might be the new dance craze in the park, and maybe only Peppa can do it like that. After non-stop dancing, Peppa decided to stop. But the streetlight didn't know what giving up meant. In the end, Peppa realized one thing. The streetlight in the park never stops partying. But Peppa could finally go home. The fun ended, but Peppa would never forget those offbeat dance moves in the park.
Peppa Pig and the Colorful Umbrella. One day, Peppa notices a colorful umbrella in the corner of the room.
Huh? Oh.
She picks it up and opens it wide. George stands under the umbrella and looks up at the bright colors. Peppa gently spins the umbrella. George tries spinning the umbrella too and giggles with joy. The colorful umbrella turns into a fun little game for Peppa and George.
Peppa and the Shared Umbrella. It's a rainy morning, and Peppa brings her favorite pink umbrella. She sees Wendy Wolf getting wet under a tree. Peppa smiles and shares her umbrella with Wendy. They walk together, splashing puddles and singing happily. Madame Gazelle says, "Sharing is wonderful." Peppa and Wendy smile under the pink umbrella. Peppa and George's walk today suddenly turned into an adventure with a giant balloon. The balloon flies easily, but does Peppa have enough strength to hold on? Don't worry, Peppa. George won't let you fly too far. Or at least, that's what she hopes. Go! And then, the balloon takes Peppa higher. No way to come back. Peppa realizes that a flight isn't always smooth, but at least it's fun. Finally, the balloon gently lands Peppa back on the ground, and George is ready for his next race with the balloon.
Peppa Pig and the Endless Ladder. Peppa and George discover a ladder that seems to have no end. With each step, the ladder looks a little taller. It feels like the ladder is reaching for the sky. Even the ladder seems excited. Suddenly, it shrinks back to normal. Sometimes, imagination is the tallest thing of all.
Peppa and George stood on the grass, seeing a big banner. Funny dance contest. George did a flip in the air, making Peppa laugh happily. Peppa tried dancing to the music, but slipped on a leaf, both of them laughing uncontrollably. Daddy and Mummy Pig stood beside them, clapping and cheering them on. Finally, Peppa and George received their medals, and the whole family hugged and laughed together.
Peppa Pig and the Rocking Chair. On a sunny morning, Peppa sits on a chair in front of the house. Today, the chair doesn't seem to want to stay still. Yippee! When George joins in, the chair rocks even more. The rocking turns into a fun balancing game. After a while, the chair slowly comes to rest. Sometimes, even a gently rocking chair can make the morning special.
Peppa Pig and the Mysterious Island. Peppa and George are playing on the sand when they find an old treasure map washed ashore. Excitement fills their hearts as they imagine the adventure ahead. Peppa opens the treasure map, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. George watches beside her, and both giggle joyfully at the idea of finding a secret treasure. They cross a pretend forest and climb little rocks, laughing as if conquering great challenges. Finally, they discover a small chest hidden under a bush. Inside is a treasure of old toys and candies, and they cheer with delight. Mummy Pig steps out, smiling as she watches Peppa and George enjoy their little treasure. Their imagination fills the house with laughter. The whole family sits around the treasure chest, sharing stories and laughing together. A magical afternoon of adventure ends in happiness.
Peppa Pig and the Secret Garden Map. While playing in the garden, Peppa and George discover a mysterious piece of paper. Peppa opens it and realizes it is a hand-drawn map filled with strange symbols. They follow the map through the garden, exploring familiar places in a new way. Under a big tree, they uncover a small hidden box. Wow! The box reveals colorful stones, ending the little adventure with warm smiles.
Peppa Pig and the Secret Room. Peppa is happily playing in the living room when she suddenly discovers a small hidden door behind the curtain. She wonders what surprises might be inside. Peppa pulls George close and opens the secret door. Both siblings step into the dimly lit room, hearts racing with curiosity, light peeking through the tiny window. Peppa and George quickly run down the stairs, and right at the bottom, they find a pile of old toys, cars, dolls, and the toys they once loved. Peppa and George eagerly approach the pile, their eyes lighting up with joy as they reminisce. Together, they gather the toys and head back to the living room to show Mummy Pig and Daddy. Mummy Pig walks in and smiles at the sight of Peppa and George happily playing with the old toys. She smiles with warmth and happiness. The whole family sits together in the living room, reminiscing about the fun memories with the old toys. Laughter fills the room, bringing everyone even closer.
Peppa Pig and the Noisy Bucket. Peppa notices an ordinary bucket that doesn't seem ordinary today. One gentle tap, and the bucket replies with a fun sound. George taps harder, and the bucket sounds even more excited. Soon the bucket turns into an unexpected musical instrument. After the performance, the bucket needs a little rest. Peppa and George learn that sometimes fun comes from the simplest things.
Peppa Pig and the Mysterious Sweet Box. Peppa and George spot a mysterious sweet box on the living room sofa. When Peppa opens it, the sweet smell spreads through the room.
Oh?
George grabs a treat and giggles happily, making Peppa laugh too. They try each sweet with sparkling excitement.
Huh?
Daddy Pig walks in, and Peppa and George happily run to share the tasty treats with him. Peppa Pig and the Dancing Leaf. Peppa finds a big leaf in the yard and picks it up. George approaches as the leaf gently shakes.
Whoa!
The leaf twirls around and dances across the yard. Wow! They imagine following it into a sparkling garden.
Yahoo!
The wind settles, and they pick up the leaf with a smile. Peppa Pig and the storytelling chair. It's raining outside. Peppa looks at Daddy Pig's old chair and asks, "Can the chair talk, Daddy?"
Aha!
Daddy Pig smiles. Of course! It has heard thousands of stories. George curiously touches the armrest. Suddenly, the chair shakes gently and begins, "Once upon a time." Peppa and George stare in amazement.
Yahoo!
In their imagination, Peppa and George go on adventures, riding dinosaurs, flying over rainbows. They wake up on the same chair, smiling. Daddy Pig chuckles. Told you it can tell stories. Everyone laughs happily.
Peppa Pig and the box that wouldn't stay still. Everything is calm until a box rolls into the yard all by itself, as if it knows exactly where it's going. The box looks perfectly normal, except it refuses to stay still for even a second. Every time Peppa tries to open it, the box rolls away. Clearly it loves playing hide and seek. George tries to block its path, but the box is very good at avoiding him, especially avoiding George. In the end, the box chooses the simplest way to stop by rolling straight into a puddle. Inside the mysterious box is a very small bowl. And Peppa and George learn that sometimes the noisiest things hide the simplest surprises.
Peppa Pig and the Magical Garden. Peppa is playing when she suddenly kicks a softly glowing stone. When she sets it back down, a glowing sprout slowly rises from the ground. The sprout grows quickly into a shimmering magical flower bush. George runs over, and the two happily admire the glowing flowers. Finally, Peppa's whole family sits down to admire the giant flower tree. Peppa and George joyfully hop on the huge blossoms, feeling truly happy. Peppa Pig and the Umbrella of Sharing. It's raining today. Peppa opens her pink umbrella and steps outside. George runs after her without one. George shivers as the rain falls. Peppa smiles and tilts her umbrella toward him. Suddenly, the umbrella wiggles and says softly, "Sharing is the best thing, Peppa." Both giggle in surprise. Peppa and George hold hands, walking under the same umbrella as raindrops play a cheerful tune. When the rain stops, they rest under the porch, giggling together. Their laughter as bright as the sunshine after the rain.
Mummy Pig teaches Peppa Pig to share food. Today, Peppa had a very delicious cake. George looked at the cake and wanted to eat it too.
Huh?
Peppa liked the cake so much that she didn't want to share. George looked at it sadly. Mummy Pig gently explained that sharing food with family makes meals more joyful. Peppa thought for a moment, then cut the cake and gave a piece to George. George happily ate his cake. Peppa also smiled and enjoyed her piece. Sitting together on the porch, the whole family shared the cake. Peppa realized that sharing food makes everyone happier.
Peppa Pig and the hat that wouldn't stay still. Peppa loves her new hat. It looks perfect and fits just right. But the hat doesn't seem to agree with its position. Peppa carefully fixes the hat, and it immediately chooses a new spot. George finds this very funny. The hat looks like it's playing a game. Finally, the hat decides to rest for a while on the grass. Peppa learns that sometimes being comfortable is better than wearing a perfect hat.